So here is my presentation on the Boston Tea Party. So let's start with the essential. When exactly did it happen? What are we talking about? So we are talking about an event that took place on December the 16th, 1773. The date is very important. As you know, the USA became independent in 1776, so this is 3 years before that. So we are talking about a time when America is only an addition of British colonies. 13 colonies in 1776, you remember, which later on will be materialized as the 13 stripes on the American flag. So 1773, we are talking about a time when George III is King of England and America is only a British colony, or British colonies, if you think of the addition of all of them. So back then we have European settlers, people who have left Europe and many of them England to settle in America. And these new American settlers pay taxes to the English king, notably on tea. So after a while, well, they get tired of paying tax. And so they come up with a claim which is no taxation without representation, which is a key element of American civilization. To put it simply, the expression means that we refuse to pay taxes to a king who does not take us into consideration. Okay, they don't vote. Well, people living in America don't vote in England, have no business with England, have nothing to do with England. They have severed ties with the mother country. Their home is America, and they don't want to pay tax to someone who lives in a different country and rules that country. Okay. So on December the 16th, 1773, what happens? Well, as you can see in the picture, a group of particularly motivated protesters board a ship and decide, as a form of protest, to throw the ship's cargo into the sea. This happened in Boston, Massachusetts. And the cargo in question was, as you can see, tea, boxes of tea, crates of tea. And so they threw everything into the harbor as a form of protest, saying we refuse to pay tax on tea and, of course, on other goods. So what happened then? A movement was started, the movement of independence of the colonies. And as you know, 3 years later, July the 4th, 1776, the USA became a real country, a real independent country, which is why July the 4th is still celebrated these days. It's Independence Day. Now, there's another legacy which occurred much later, in 2009, a movement that decided to call itself the Tea Party movement. So who are we talking about here? Well, it's not a real party. That's why Tea Party might be a misleading expression. More a movement, as I was saying, a movement created inside the Republican Party. So they're not independent. They belong to the Republican Party, and they believe in small government, low taxation, and responsible spending. In other words, they want to pay as low tax as possible, and they want the power of the central government, of the central administration, the power of the president in Washington and the president's administration to be limited to a minimum. Okay, so they believe that power should be exercised locally by state governors, by each state, and that Washington is just a bunch of bureaucrats costing the nation a lot without achieving much. Okay? So these people supported Donald Trump in 2016, and they are supposed to have played a major part in his election, because although they're just one movement inside the Republican Party, they have acquired a certain leverage, certain power. And Therefore, they managed to get things done and to have their claims heard. So what are we talking about them today? Simply because when you consider the current anti-lockdown protests, the people who are seen protesting, although they do not claim to be part of the Tea Party movement, bear a lot of resemblance with these people. Therefore, there's a legacy, a heritage, a lineage between the people who destroyed the cargo of the ship in 1773 and the people today who believe in a libertarian approach of government and who want to limit the power of the government. So this episode, the Boston Tea Party, is definitely one to remember. So make sure you at least get the date, the events, so what happened, when it happened, why it happened, how it happened, and what consequences it had, and what is today's legacy of this historical event. Okay, thank you.